People say a building with only 12 floors cannot hide a 13th, but at exactly 1:13 a.m. in Silver Heights, the lift used to stop anyway, and if you ever hear its bell behind you, remember teeth. Some floors do not take you up or down, they take you away. The building was known as Silver Heights, a name that felt ironic to those who lived there because nothing about it felt bright or safe after sunset. It was an old concrete tower squeezed between newer apartments, and although it officially had only 12 floors, everyone who stayed long enough sensed that something about the structure was wrong, as if the building itself was hiding a secret level that did not belong to the world above ground. Residents noticed strange rules about the lift almost immediately. The buttons showed floors 1, 2, 12. There was no number 13 anywhere. Not on the panel, not in the blueprints, not even in the maintenance records. Yet the lift often behaved as if it was following commands from something unseen, stopping for no reason, opening its doors to empty hallways, or refusing to move when someone was inside, especially after midnight. The first officially recorded incident happened 5 years ago when a delivery boy named RF entered the lift at exactly 1:13 a.m. CCTV footage later showed him pressing the button for the 7th floor. But instead of moving upward normally, the lift's digital screen flickered, the numbers blurred, and then for less than a second, the camera captured a number that should not exist, 13, after which the footage cut to static. When the lift doors finally opened again, RF was no longer inside. His bike was found outside the building the next morning, still warm as if he had just parked it, but his body was discovered 3 days later inside the lift shaft, twisted at an impossible angle, with no visible injuries that could explain his death. And the medical report concluded that his heart had simply stopped, as if terror itself had killed him. After RF's death, rumors spread quickly among the residents. Some claimed the lift led to a hidden floor that existed between time and space. Others believed the building had been constructed over something ancient and cursed, an unfinished ritual site or a mass grave, and that the lift acted as a doorway whenever the clock struck 1:13, a time that soon became feared more than midnight itself. Imran, the night security guard, tried to stay logical. He had worked in dangerous places before and believed fear was created by the mind, but even he could not ignore the patterns. Every time the lift stopped on its own, the temperature inside the building dropped suddenly. Phones lost signal, and people reported hearing whispers in a language they could not understand, coming from behind the lift doors. One night, while doing his rounds, Imran noticed the lift doors slowly opening on the ground floor even though no one had called it. Inside, the lights were dimmer than usual, and faint handprints appeared on the metal walls from the inside, as if someone invisible was pressing against them, trying desperately to get out. And then, without warning, the lift began to descend instead of going up, something no lift should ever do. Imran stepped back as the doors closed. His radio crackled with distorted voices, and for a brief moment, he heard a woman softly say his name even though no one in the building knew him personally. The digital screen flashed random numbers before stopping on one final display, 13, glowing unnaturally bright, as if it was waiting for someone to step inside. From that night onward, the lift developed a new habit. Anyone who entered it around 1:13 a.m. would later be found either dead with faces frozen in pure horror or alive but mentally shattered, unable to speak properly, scribbling the same number again and again on walls, floors, and even their own skin. 13. 13. 13. As if they had seen something they were never meant to remember. And then came the night when the lift doors opened by themselves again, this time revealing not darkness, but a faintly lit corridor that did not match any floor in the building. The walls looked wet, stained with something dark, and distant footsteps echoed slowly, patiently, as if whatever lived on that floor had finally decided to invite someone inside. The corridor beyond the lift felt wrong the moment it appeared. Its ceiling was lower than normal, and the air inside carried a heavy metallic smell that clung to the lungs, as if the place had not been meant for breathing humans. The walls were covered in peeling paint, mixed with dark stains that looked old, yet somehow fresh, and faint bulb lights flickered weakly, revealing doors on both sides that had no numbers, only deep scratches, as if someone had tried to claw their way out again and again. Imran stood frozen at a distance, his instincts screaming at him to run, but something stronger pulled at his mind, a pressure behind his eyes that whispered promises of answers. He noticed that the floor beneath the lift doors was damp, and as the light shifted, he realized it was not water, but dried blood layered over years, each footprint overlapping another, all facing the lift, none leading away from it. From deep within the corridor, a sound began to rise, slow footsteps dragging across the floor, followed by a low murmuring that grew clearer with every second. It sounded like many voices speaking at once, overlapping, broken, repeating fragments of sentences, prayers, screams, and names. Imran recognized one of them. Suddenly, it was Arif, the delivery boy, his voice trembling as it begged for the lift doors to stay open. The lights inside the lift flickered violently, and for a brief second, Imran saw a movement behind the nearest door in the corridor. A shadow pressed itself against the surface from the inside, stretching unnaturally tall, its hands sliding slowly across the metal as if feeling for weakness. Then another door rattled, and another, until the entire corridor seemed alive, breathing, waiting. Imran tried to step back, but his legs refused to move. The digital clock on the wall behind him froze at 1:13 a.m., and the silence that followed was so complete that even his heartbeat felt too loud. That was when a woman stepped out of the corridor, her clothes torn and outdated, her neck bent slightly to one side as if it had once been broken. Her eyes were empty yet fixed directly on him. She smiled softly and spoke in a calm, familiar voice, telling him that the 13th floor was never meant to be hidden. It was built to hold those who died unfinished, people whose fear had nowhere else to go. She explained that the lift did not choose victims randomly. It answered those who noticed it, those who listened when it called, and Imran realized with horror that every strange sound he had ever heard had been an invitation. Behind the woman, more figures emerged. Men, women, even children, their bodies bearing marks of violent deaths, crushed limbs, burned skin, hollow eyes. Yet they all shared the same expression, relief mixed with hunger, as if seeing a living person was a rare gift. The corridor lights grew brighter, revealing symbols carved into the walls, dates, names, and always the same number repeated endlessly at the center of every carving. The lift let out a long mechanical groan, deeper than any normal sound it had ever made, and the doors began to widen further on their own. As if urging Imran to step closer, the woman raised her hand slowly and promised him that once he entered, he would never be alone again. That fear would end because there would be no way back, and as Imran felt his foot slide forward against his will, he understood why some people returned alive, but broken, because part of them was always left behind on the 13th floor. Somewhere above, in the normal world, a resident pressed the call button for the lift, unaware that at 1:13 a.m., the building was already deciding who would be taken next. The call button outside the lift blinked uselessly as the doors remained open, frozen between worlds, and Imran felt a sharp pain tear through his chest as if something invisible had hooked itself into his heart and was slowly pulling. The woman's hand never touched him, yet his body moved forward inch by inch, the corridor air swallowing the warmth from his skin while the voices grew louder, clearer, no longer whispers but desperate cries repeating the same sentence over and over. "Stay with us." As soon as his foot crossed the threshold, the smell intensified, burning rubber mixed with rot and something electrical, and the walls around him seemed to shift, stretching slightly as if the space itself was alive and reacting to his presence. The lift doors slammed shut behind him with a force that echoed like a coffin lid, and the digital screen above flickered before locking onto a single glowing number, 30 in, which no longer looked digital but carved, uneven, almost bleeding light. The corridor behind the woman expanded impossibly, revealing dozens of doors now standing wide open, and inside each one, Imran saw fragments of lives cut short, a man repeatedly falling through darkness, a child hiding under a staircase, while shadows crawled closer, a woman trapped inside a burning bus screaming silently. Every room replaying the final moments of someone who had entered the lift at the wrong time, their fear preserved like a photograph that never faded. The woman turned and began walking down the corridor, and without understanding why, Imran followed, his feet heavy as if sinking into soft ground. He noticed that the floor beneath him was covered in faint fingerprints rather than footprints, as if people had been dragged instead of walking, and on the walls, new scratches began to appear, forming his name slowly, letter by letter, carving themselves deep into the concrete. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. The pressure in his head grew unbearable, and suddenly he realized something far worse than death awaited here. The people on the 13th floor were not simply trapped. They were being erased, their memories consumed to keep the place alive, their identities fading until all that remained was fear and hunger, and the lift needed new minds to replace what was lost. At the end of the corridor stood a wide door, unlike the others, its surface smooth and dark, pulsing faintly as if breathing. The woman stopped in front of it and finally looked at Imran with something close to pity, telling him that this was where guards always ended up. The watchers who stayed too long, the ones who learned too much, because the building never allowed witnesses to leave whole. Behind that door, something shifted, massive and patient, and the walls trembled as if responding to its movement. Imran felt his thoughts slipping, memories blurring, his own past fading like static on a broken screen. And for the first time, he understood why survivors were found alive but insane, because they had managed to escape before this door opened, before the 13th floor learned their names. Above them, in the normal floors of Silver Heights, the lift suddenly became active again, its doors opening harmlessly for a young couple returning late at night, unaware that deep below, the corridor lights were growing brighter, and that the building, once again, was feeding. The young couple stepped into the lift, laughing softly, unaware that the metal beneath their feet was still warm from something far older than human fear. The doors closed gently, as if nothing had happened, and the panel obediently showed the ground floor. But deep below, the 13th floor reacted instantly. The corridor lights pulsed brighter, and the massive presence behind the dark door shifted again, sensing fresh life above like a slow breath being drawn in. Imran collapsed to his knees as the pressure inside his skull intensified. Fragments of his memories surfaced and vanished in seconds. His first night on the job, his mother's voice, the taste of tea at dawn, all dissolving into noise. The woman knelt beside him and whispered that forgetting was mercy here. That pain only belonged to those who tried to remember. And as she spoke, the walls behind her displayed flickering images of former guards, all of them staring straight ahead with empty expressions, their names scratched and crossed out repeatedly. The dark door began to open without sound, revealing not a room but an endless vertical space, like the inside of a deep well, lined with moving shadows. Faces formed and disappeared within it, screaming silently as they were pulled downward, feeding something that did not have a shape but demanded fear, the way lungs demanded air. Imran felt himself being lifted slightly off the floor, as if gravity no longer applied to him the way it did above. Suddenly, the lift far above jolted violently. The young couple screamed as the lights flickered, and for a split second, the digital display glitched, flashing a number that made the man's stomach drop. 13. The woman pressed the emergency button frantically, unaware that by doing so she had answered a call rather than sent one, and the lift began to descend faster than physics allowed. On the 13th floor, the massive presence surged with excitement, the corridor shaking as new doors materialized along the walls. Blank and waiting, the woman rose slowly, her eyes now glowing faintly, and told Imran that he had one last purpose, that every floor needed a watcher to guide the lost inside, someone who still remembered just enough of humanity to speak kindly. And as she placed her hand on his chest, he felt something tear free and sink into the dark below. Above ground, the lift door slammed open into the hidden corridor, and the couple stumbled out screaming, immediately realizing they were not in their building anymore. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally as the doors closed behind them, sealing their exit, while from the far end of the corridor, a familiar figure stepped forward calmly, wearing a security uniform, his face pale, his eyes hollow, and in a voice that sounded almost human, Imran gently asked them which floor they were trying to reach. The couple froze at the sound of Imran's voice, relief briefly washing over their terror because he looked like a normal guard. Someone official, someone safe, yet something about his posture felt wrong. His smile never reached his eyes, and when he blinked it was too slow. As if he was still learning how to do it, the woman clutched her partner's arm and asked where they were. And Imran answered honestly, telling them they were still inside the building, just not on any floor they were meant to visit. As he guided them down the corridor, the walls reacted to their presence, faint stains spreading like ink in water, the whispers returning softly at first, testing them. The man tried to stay calm, but his breathing grew shallow when he noticed names carving themselves into the concrete beside each door, dates of death following each one. And when he asked Imran who these people were, Imran hesitated, feeling a sharp pain behind his eyes. Fragments of his old self trying to surface before being crushed again. The woman suddenly stopped walking, pointing at one of the open doors. Inside, she saw a version of herself standing in the lift, screaming as the doors refused to open, her future death replaying itself in perfect detail. And she understood then that this place did not show memories, but outcomes. Possibilities locked in place the moment someone answered the lift's call. Her scream echoed down the corridor, awakening something deeper, something impatient. The massive presence shifted again, and the corridor lights flared violently, more doors bursting open as shadows spilled out and clung to the walls like living stains. The man grabbed Imran by the uniform, begging him to let them go. He showed them a way back, and for a brief moment, Imran's face cracked, his expression twisting with real pain as a memory fought its way through. The smell of morning tea, the sound of birds, the idea of sunrise. That moment of weakness did not go unnoticed. The woman from before appeared instantly, her neck bending further than before, her voice sharp now, warning Imran that kindness had consequences. The shadows surged forward, wrapping around his legs like chains, and he realized the truth too late. The 13th floor allowed hope only to punish it, feeding on the rise and collapse of human belief. Above them, in the normal world, residents of Silver Heights reported hearing loud banging inside the lift shaft. Maintenance workers were called, and when they forced the lift open at dawn, they found it empty. Walls scratched deep with fingernails, and 3 names written repeatedly in dried blood on the floor. 2 unfamiliar, and one that made the supervisor step back in horror. Imran that night. At exactly 1:13 a.m., the lift began moving on its own again, and this time when the doors opened, Imran was standing inside alone, uniform neat, face calm, and as a new resident hesitated outside, he smiled gently and held the doors open a little longer, waiting. The final incident that exposed Silver Heights did not happen at night, but just before dawn, when exhaustion made fear quieter and people careless. Because on that morning, a fire alarm malfunction forced the entire building to evacuate, and residents crowded the lobby half asleep, angry and confused, while the lift doors stood open longer than they ever had before, revealing Imran inside, perfectly still, eyes calm, patiently watching the crowd as if counting. A middle-aged woman named Sarah, a schoolteacher who had recently moved into the building, noticed something no one else did. The lift's digital display was blank, no numbers, no arrows, just a faint reflection that did not match reality. And when she looked closer, she realized the reflection showed more people standing behind her than were actually there. Shapes overlapping living bodies, faces pale and unfinished, waiting. Her breath caught as she remembered the rumors she had laughed at weeks earlier. Before anyone could stop her, Sarah stepped into the lift and faced Imran directly, asking him a question no one ever asked. Not which floor, but how long he had been trapped. The word trapped pierced something deep inside him, and for the first time in countless cycles. Imran's smile faltered. Memories surged violently. The first night, the corridor, the door, the choice he never truly made. The lift shuddered as the 13th floor reacted to this disturbance. Walls deep below, cracking as if angered. The doors began to close on their own, but Sarah forced her arm between them, screaming for the others to cut the power. Sparks flew as maintenance finally shut the system down, plunging the lift into darkness, and for a brief, impossible moment, the 13th floor lost its anchor. The corridor lights flickered out, doors froze mid-formation, and the massive presence beneath the building screamed without sound as fear turned to hunger. In that darkness, Imran collapsed, clutching his head as everything he had forgotten crashed back into him at once. Every victim, every lie he had spoken kindly, every door he had led someone to. And with that flood of memory came something the 13th floor could not tolerate: guilt. Because guilt did not feed it, guilt weakened it. Sarah held him as the lift trembled violently, telling him that he was still human, that witnesses mattered, that remembering was resistance. The building responded violently, cracks tearing through concrete, alarms blaring endlessly, residents fleeing as floors warped subtly, stairwells looping back on themselves. And in the shaft, the lift began to fall, not downward but inward, collapsing toward the hidden floor as if being dragged. Imran understood then that there was only one way to end it. The 13th floor needed a final witness, Someone who would remember everything and take it nowhere else. As the lift plunged, Imran pushed Sarah toward the opening doors that had briefly reappeared on the ground floor, shoving her out with the last of his strength. And as she screamed his name, the doors slammed shut, sealing him inside. The digital display flared to life one final time, not showing 13, but showing nothing at all, erasing itself as the lift vanished into the shaft. When emergency crews arrived, Silver Heights was unstable, but standing, the lift system destroyed beyond repair. And in the debris at the bottom of the shaft, they found no bodies, only walls carved deep with thousands of names, all ending with the same word, scratched violently beneath them. Remember, Sarah told the authorities everything, but official reports labeled it mass hysteria, a structural anomaly, a tragic accident, and the building was condemned. Years later, Silver Heights was demolished completely. The land left empty, developers claiming the ground was unsuitable, yet people passing the site late at night still report a strange phenomenon, their phones glitching at 1:13 a.m. Screens briefly flashing a number that no longer exists, and if you stand there long enough, you can sometimes hear the faint sound of a lift bell, followed by footsteps that stop just behind you, as if something is waiting to see whether you noticed it. Because the 13th floor was destroyed, but it was never forgotten, and somewhere deep beneath memory itself, a watcher still stands, making sure it is never built again.